So we've been talking about quadratic formula, and the solutions to the equation are called, this is a little review here in the beginning, the x-intercepts on the graph of the parabola. The number of possible solutions, well, usually we get 2, okay? You could also get just 1, and then you could have 0 solutions, no solution. So you have those 3 options. All right. Now, sometimes, it says, well, let's discuss why do you get just 2, 0, or 1 solution. Let's take a look at that. All right. So here, let's do quadratic formula. So I'm going to go kind of quickly here because this is something that we did the other day. It's already equal to 0. So I'm going to go x equals opposite of b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. Now, in the next step, that denominator just becomes 2, and this number under the square root ends up being negative 20. Now, that negative 20 is problematic, right? You can't take the square root of a negative number, and that ended up being no solution. Okay? In the next one, we have a is 1, b is 2, c is 1, x equals opposite b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. Sorry, I wrote negative 1. That should be positive 1. Next down here, that becomes a 2. The number under the square root becomes a 0. Now watch this. I mean, we know that the square root of 0 is 0, right? So now I break it up. I do negative 2 plus 0 over 2. And now I do negative 2 minus 0 over 2. Well, and this is to give me my x, right? Negative 2 plus 0 is negative 2, over 2 is negative 1. You see here, we get the same answer. So we really just get one answer. And then this last one, this is going to be the more typical. So x equals opposite b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. The number inside the square root here becomes a 36. That's a perfect square, and we know that the square root of 36 is just 6. So here, 2 plus 6 is 8 over 2 is 4. Now we have to do the minus. That would be negative 4 over 2, which is negative 2. So you hear, on this one, we got 2 answers. So notice, what's making this happen? Well, what makes it happen is this number that's in the square root. See, if this number that's in the square root is positive, you're going to get 2 different answers, because adding a positive number or subtracting a positive number is going to give you 2 different things. All right? If this number inside the square root is 0, then you see you just get 1 answer, because adding or subtracting 0 isn't any different. And if you have a negative, you get no solution because you can't take the square root of a negative number. So, that thing that's underneath the square root, remember, it was the b squared minus 4ac. That's what was underneath the square root. And that's something we call the discriminant. And if it came out to negative, in our example in the previous page, it came out to negative 20. And in example 1, 2 came out to 0. This one came out to 36. But you see, if it's negative, if that discriminant's negative, it doesn't have to be negative 20. It could be negative anything. the number of x-intercepts you're going to have is 0. Now, this is what's a little bit tricky. If the discriminant is 0, the number of x-intercepts you're going to have is 1. And then if it's positive, you're going to have 2 x-intercepts. Okay? So remember, these aren't the actual solutions. This is just the number of solutions. So sometimes we just want to know how many answers there are. And you can just tell, it's a little shortcut. Figure out what b squared minus 4ac is. If it's positive, 2 solutions. If it's negative, no solution. If it's 0, you get 1 answer. Okay? Now, I've talked about x-intercepts. It says refer to the graph at the right. Is the discriminant of this graph positive, negative, or 0? Well, this graph has 2 x-intercepts. 2 x-intercepts means we must have had a positive discriminant because there's 2 x-intercepts. Again, look at the table above. That's how we got that. And as I was saying, sometimes you don't, we just want to know how many answers there are. So look at this one. We're not even going to do the quadratic formula. We're just going to do part of it. We're going to do the b squared minus 4ac. Well, a is 1, b is negative 6, c is 9. So b squared minus 4 times a times c. That's 36 minus 36, which is 0. Discriminant of 0 means 1 solution. So you don't have to do the whole quadratic formula if you just want to determine the number of solutions, okay? All right. I hope that you realize, look, you see the solutions, remember, is the same thing as x-intercepts. This parabola does not cross the x-axis. That's no solution. Okay, no work to do there. How many real solutions does this have? Again, let's just do the discriminant. We want to look at b squared minus 4ac. A is 1, b is negative 6, c is negative 10. So b squared minus 4 times a times c, that becomes 36. A negative times a negative is positive. So we end up with 76. A positive discriminant means 2 solutions. All right. All right, so it says sketch a graph. You don't need exact points. You're just doing a rough sketch of a quadratic that has the following solutions. So 1 solution, remember that just means, actually that one, I'm going to save that one for last, okay? No solution, that's an easy one. Something like this, you see? It doesn't cross the x-axis, that's no solution. See, I got this disappearing ink here. I don't know what's going on with that. 2 solutions would be something like this. You see, there are the 2 x-intercepts. Those would be the solutions there. Okay? Disappears. 1 solution means, how do you, here, it could be upside down, but, you see how this parabola just nicks it in one place. That's 1 solution. Sorry about the disappearing ink. I don't know what the deal is with that. So here's some things for you guys to practice. Find that you should really stop this and do it yourself. But, I'm going to do, let's see here. This one, I'm not going to do this one. You should come up with the discriminant to be 0, which means 1 solution. I will do this one. A is negative 1. Sometimes it will be negative. That's okay. B is 5. C is negative 9. So remember, we want to do b squared minus 4ac. So that's 5 squared minus 4 times -1 times -9. So that's 25. Negative times a negative times a negative is going to be minus, okay? You get -11. A negative discriminant means no solution. All right? Now C I'll do as well. This one's gonna freak some people out. A is 7, B is -1. But remember, the C is the plain number. The reason why there's no plain number here is because it must be 0. No big deal, we can do that. So B squared minus 4 times A times C. Well, anything times 0, that goes away. -1 squared is just +1. So this is the discriminant. It's positive. So that means 2 solutions. Now you got to be careful. You got to be paying attention to this stuff here. So like this one down here, A is 3. There is no B because there's no plane X. So that's 0. And the C is 15. So B squared minus 4 times A times C, that ends up being 0 minus, that's a minus 180. You get a discriminant of -180. Remember, negative discriminant means no solution. This one here you can do yourself. Discriminant ends up being -80, which means no solution as well. A is 1, B is 0, remember, C is -8. B squared minus 4 times A times C. Negative times a negative is positive. So we get 2 solutions. Okay. Quickly knock out the rest of this. The discriminant, again, this is picture, think of y as being 0. So A is 2, B is -5, C is -4. B squared minus 4AC. So we get 25. Negative times a negative is positive. We get 57. That's the discriminant. Positive discriminant means 2 solutions. Find the coordinates of the y-intercept. Remember, every x-intercept has a y value of 0. Every y-intercept has a x value of 0. So if I plug 0 in for x, that goes away. That goes away. My y is just -4, right? Easy peasy. Down here, find the coordinates of the x-intercepts. Again, I would just use quadratic formula, right? Notice how we already started it up top. We already have the a, b, and c written down, and we already have, so watch this, x equals opposite of b plus or minus square root. And we already figured out what that was. That's the discriminant. That came out to 57. And this is all over 2 times a, which is 2 times 2. And now you can use your calculator to figure out these two answers. You should get 3.14 and -0.64.